Good morning. Today's lesson is lesson 4.3b. Our goal today is to begin to solve equations by factoring. Now on this you can see solve equations by graphing factoring. That's number 2 on this one. We're going to go with the simpler ones today. Tomorrow we'll tackle the more complex ones. Alright, the first thing we need to talk about is the zero product property. If I were to give you two numbers, let's just say I give you this number times this number, and I tell you that it's equal to 0, then you know that either our first number has to be 0 or our second number has to be 0. Both of them could be 0, it's the same number, but one of the two numbers would have to be 0 to get 0 as an answer. That's how the zero product property works. If x plus 3 times x minus 5 is equal to 0, then either x plus 3 has to equal 0 or x minus 5 has to equal 0. That's the only way you're going to get 0 when you multiply two terms together. All right? So we're going to use that fact to solve these these quadratic equations. All right, our first equation, here's an example that I've got already worked out. Let's say we got 3x squared minus, or 3x squared equals 15x. Okay, here's your original equation right here. Okay, let's get 0 on one side so we can use that zero product property. Now notice there's only two terms, so what we're going to do is we're going to look for the greatest common factor of 3x squared and 15x. 3 and x. Alright, we'll factor that out of both terms. 3x squared divided by 3x equals x, minus minus 15x divided by 3x equals 5. Alright, now once we know that either 3x has to equal 0 or x minus 5 has to equal 0. Now if 3x equals 0, then x has to be 0. If x minus 5 equals 0, then I know that x has to equal 5. So our solution is 0, 5. I'm going to work one out for you now, over here on the other side of the board. Okay, we have 16x squared plus 8x equals 0. Now I'm going to look at the 16 and the 8. I'm going to see if I can find the greatest common factor on those, 16 and 8. And my greatest common factor is, of course, 8. I can divide both of them by 8. And then I've got the x squared and the x. The greatest common factor between x squared and x is just x. So that's what I'm going to divide 8x out of both of these terms. Okay. Alright, let's start off with 16x squared divided by 8x. 16 divided by 8 is 2, x squared divided by x is x. So I've got 2x. Next, let's jump over here to the 8x. 8x divided by 8x. Now, you've got to have something in the parentheses because we had two terms originally. So 8x divided by 8x is 1. Alright, now I have two numbers being multiplied. 8x is a number, alright, just like any other number. That's a number. We just don't know what it is because we don't know what x is. 2x plus 1 is a number. Right? It looks like a math problem, but it's a number. I just don't know what x is. But I know that when I multiply these two numbers together, I get 0. So now then, if that's the case, then I know that either 8x has to equal 0 or 2x plus 1 has to equal 0. Now if 8x equals 0, of course x is equal to 0 itself. If 2x plus 1 is equal to 0, I have to solve this algebra problem. I'll subtract 1 from both sides. 2x minus 1 is 2x. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. I'll divide both sides by 2. 2x divided by 2 is x. Negative 1 divided by 2 is negative 1/2. Alright? These are our two solutions. And so to write it out, I'll just put it in a set. 0 and negative 1/2. Notice I didn't worry too much about the order from least to greatest or anything in my set. Alright, so that's a basic. Let's jump up here and we're going to go to this next one. Okay, this is the main type of problem for today. We have this problem. Let's stop that. Fix it. I don't want too long. Here we have this problem right up here. Okay, leading coefficient is 1. What I'm going to show you today only works when the leading coefficient is 1. Alright, step 1. You take your original equation and look at this last number. You're going to make a list of all the factors or all the things you can multiply together to get positive 20. Notice 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5, negative 1 times negative 20, negative 2 times negative 10, negative 4 times negative 5. Those all multiply to give us 20. But the key is they have to add to give us positive 9. That adds to give us 21, 12, 9, negative 21, negative 12, negative 9. So obviously this is the combination of numbers that we're going to be using. Okay, now they go into a whole lot of work here in the book to explain, and if you'd like to look at how they're doing it, all these things, all of these steps basically are what they do to explain. Okay, I'm going to take you through and show you a little simpler. But the key, oh, one more thing, the key is from here down. Okay, that's the main thing that we want to look at, because I'll get you to that point very quick and very easy. Okay, right here is the point that we're looking for. We know that we have two numbers. X plus 5 is a number. X plus 4 is a number. We know that when we multiply them together, we get 0. So either x plus 5 has to equal 0, or x plus 4 has to equal 0. Now, if x plus 5 is 0, x is negative 5. If x plus 4 is 0, x is negative 4. That problem is now solved. Okay? Negative 5 and negative 4 are your solutions. Now, let's take a look at my little method here. All right. Doing the same thing is just a little simpler, I think. Okay? The key is starting off with this sign right there. If that sign is positive, okay, well first, before we do anything else, so we're going to open up two parentheses, because that's the key right here. You open two parentheses, say equal to 0. Okay, most of this work is done in your mind as long as you know the basic rules. If that sign is positive, follow these steps. If this sign is negative, you follow these steps. Now obviously this is a positive sign, so we're going to take, and first thing, before we actually do any other work, one other thing, it's been a year since I taught this, I apologize. Alright, first thing, before we even go further with our parentheses, we will always start off with x and x. That's as long as you don't have a number or a leading coefficient other than 1. If there's no number in front of x squared, do this. Okay, since that's a plus, then we're going to take and look at this sign. If that's a plus, I'm going to put these signs in the parentheses. Now, if this sign were a minus, if that's a plus and this is a minus, both of these would be minuses. Okay, now I need to think of numbers that multiply to get me 20. Those numbers are 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Okay? Now, we want the numbers to, and here's another point that you look. Stop doing that. I just need to fix that. Okay, here's another important part. Alright, these two numbers have to multiply to get me 20 and add to get me 9. Okay? They have to add to get me 9. Obviously here we've got 4 and 5 are the two numbers that we're looking for. When you're done with that point, we'll put a 4 here, we'll put a 5 there. Now, when you're at there, you just go ahead and solve it. If x plus 4 times x plus 5 is equal to 0, then I know that either x plus 4 has to equal 0, meaning that x would be negative 4, or x plus 5 has to be 0, meaning that x equals negative 5. And there's your solutions to that problem. Don't worry, I'll take you through another one here. Okay? In this problem, you can see the difference between this problem and the last one is this negative sign right here. I'll show you how to handle when you got a negative. Notice on the previous problem, it was plus sign. Okay, step 1. Open two parentheses. Since x squared has a leading coefficient of 1, in other words, there's no number in front of x, I put an x and I put an x. Okay, now, the difference between this problem and the previous one, if this is a minus, put a plus in one, put a minus in the other parenthesis. So in my first parenthesis, I'll just go put a plus here, then I'll put a minus in the second. Okay? Now, we still need to think of two numbers that multiply to give us this. Alright? So I've got 30 times 1. I've got 15 times 2. I've got 10 times 3. And you just keep going. I've got 6 times 5. And those are the numbers that multiply to give us 30. But the trick here is that these numbers also have to subtract to leave us with 1. There's a 1 in front of that x that you just can't see. So the only numbers that subtract to leave us with 1 are these two numbers. And then the last thing you look at, that sign tells you where to put the larger of your two numbers. I'll put a 6 with the plus. So, put 6 here, put the 5 here. All right, now we'll solve this problem. X plus 6 times x minus 5 equals 0. That means that either x plus 6 is 0, meaning that x has to equal -6, or x minus 5 equals 0, x has to equal 5. Your solution, -6, +5. That problem's finished up. Okay. Let's look at one more. I think I've got one more here. Yeah. Okay. The key is this sign right there, making sure that you haven't got a number in front of x squared being visible. Open two parentheses, x and x. The sign in front of the 33 being positive means we're going to put the same signs in both parentheses. And what sign is it? You look right here. We're going to put two pluses in here. Plus and plus. Now we've got to think. Think of two numbers that multiply to give us 33 and add to give us 14. Well, there's only two numbers that multiply to give you 33, and that's 3 and 11. And 3 plus 11 is 14. So we know that our numbers are 3 and 11. I'll put a 3 in one. I'll put an 11 in the next. Set this equal to 0. If x plus 3 is equal to 0, then that would mean x is -3. If x plus 11 is equal to 0, x equals -11. The problem is finished. All right, so review this. Look at it as much as possible. Be sure and go back to this screen. Follow the directions that I've worked out for you. Right here is the key part of the whole thing. All right? I call this my think method. Think about how you're going to solve the problem. Use your brains, people. All right, that's it for today. Tomorrow we go on to a more complex problem.